All right. So, Andy Hulbert, welcome to the Disenfranchised. How are you doing today?
Yeah, very good. Thanks for having me today. It's lovely to be invited on.
Yeah, it's lovely to be able to speak with you as well. As I said just beforehand, we've sort of seen each other a bit on LinkedIn maybe, but not quite connected. So it's great to speak with you, and it's great to see such a fantastically crafted background as well on your on Zoom. You've been working from home for a while.
This is the office in the garden. I have an outhouse in the garden. I have a very old house and an old workshop that's converted into an office to give me some peace and quiet. I think it was working at home during lockdown and constantly being disturbed by people who were bored during the first lockdown prompted me to go, right, I need to get an office and I need to be able to lock that door, so I can lock myself away now. So no, it's all good.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I know exactly the same thing. I was in the corner of our bedroom and kind of just facing the wall, and then there'd be
Yeah,
my
as I
wife
was.
and kids and cats and everything walking behind me all the time. So yeah, I think there's still people out there doing that, but no, I
Mm.
couldn't do it. I've got an office in the garden as well, so that's cool. But yeah, let's before I dive into what I can see in the background and the company you're working for at the moment, let's find out a little bit more about you and your kind of background. So let's start with your first job. What was your first job, Andy?
Funnily enough, my first job, which is quite relevant to now, I was a pot wash in a fish and chip restaurant, um, shelling oysters, washing pots, making mushy peas. Back when I was 16, so I've started at fish and chips, and I've gone back to sort of the best fish and chips now with Harry Ramsden's. But my career was I sort of left school at 17 with not the greatest of grades. School was too much fun, and I should have applied myself further. I got into cocktail bartending afterwards when I was 17, 18. I worked for all the big boys, S&N, Scottish and Newcastle, Whitbread, you name it, Fuller's. I've probably worked for them. I got into assistant management when I was 19, deputy manager by the age of 21, and I got my first general manager position, I think when I was 23, 24. And then for sort of 10 years, general manager for different brands around the UK, even had my own business. Back when I was 28, I had a boutique hotel, letting rooms and pub restaurant where I chefed as well. So very, very checkered. I've even up to sort of hard dance nightclubs in Cardiff, to bars, to restaurants. I always thought because I was a cocktail bartender back in the day, I always thought that wet-led things was my speciality, but actually every business I've ran in food, I've always achieved double-digit growth and profit growth in any business. So I know food businesses are actually where my strengths probably lie.
Yeah.
And when I was 30, I decided I had my first child, Monty, and I decided to try and get out of being a general manager and get into an ops role. I went away and did an Open University degree in business for 3.5 years. While working full time and having a newborn, which probably at the time wasn't the smartest move. So life is really
you're not getting much time for yourself there at all, are you?
You can see the lines, and that's what springboarded me to sort of change direction out of hospitality, because I had over 20 years in hospitality, essentially, and then I got into franchising with a company called Warren's Bakery.
Before we dive into that, though, can I just ask a couple of questions about that early career? Just because I like to understand, in those early days, where did you see your career going? Did you think, okay, hospitality is the way for me, and this is how I'm going to kind of progress, or was it just a case of kind of falling and stumbling into these jobs almost?
It's hard. Hospitality, once you get into it, it's quite hard to get out, because I think people don't understand the skill set of a hospitality general manager in the wider business environment.
No.
I was earning a decent salary as a general manager. Some of the businesses I ran turned over £2-3 million a year, had a management team of 6 to 7, had 80 to 100 staff. As a general manager, I had skill set of commerciality, sales, marketing, HR, and actually no one recognises all of these business skill sets in the wider business environment. So you tend to find when you're in hospitality, even if you applied for a job out of hospitality, you couldn't get it because they didn't recognise the skills that people possess in that environment.
If you think about it, you've got to be a fantastic communicator and leader, really, to manage. I think the majority of the working population within hospitality are quite young, right? And they can be a handful at times, you know. We've all been young ones.
Look at the 20,000 steps you used to do on a Saturday night running around a restaurant. It is a young person's game
as well, yeah.
It's probably why I've packed on the pounds sitting in an office now. But no, it's a shame. People don't understand the level of entrepreneurship and business mentality that general managers have in the hospitality sector. And it's not until you get out of, someone gives somebody a chance to get out of and do something else, that you actually see that skill set, like you said, great communication, people management, leadership. You see that, and you see that sort of flourish in another environment as well.
Yeah. Okay. So you were mentioning you then moved into Warren Bakeries, and was this the first franchise brand that you'd started to work for?
Yeah, I was taken on as a business development manager with my scope to create the training manuals, the operations. I had to use even down to making the specifications of sandwiches and taking a photo and putting. But that was all the business skill set I had from hospitality. I brought into Warren's Bakery, created every manual they needed. It took me a year, pretty much spent a year putting together all the bread and butter, the operations of what they needed, as well as deep diving into franchise. Because I have to say, 8 years ago, I didn't know what franchise was. I didn't know. And I didn't know how big it was. And so I spent a year understanding it.
What were your thoughts of what did you see franchising as then before you took on that role?
Do you know what? I hadn't ever thought of it. And it's not until you go, oh, Subway, that's a franchise. What? It's not owned by Subway and McDonald's. And you go, oh my God, all these companies that I didn't know are run by local entrepreneurs. I thought it was the big corporate giant as such. So that was quite an eye-opener. And then it made you sort of think to yourself, what? So I could own my own Subway. I could own my own restaurant or the gym. Okay. And it did. And I have to say, I've come from owning my own hotel and or letting a boutique hotel, pub. And it was hard work. And no one gave us no one gave us an operations manual. No one gave us a marketing manual, or no one helped us with our own marketing. And you think, I wonder what it would have been like if what I did was a franchise and I had the support that a franchisee gets. And then you start to think, okay, I see the value in this now.
That's a really interesting point, actually. So when you're setting up your own business, obviously there's no blueprint, to follow. Did you find yourself kind of in the detail with certain things, like, I don't know, just the basics, like maybe what the marketing should look like? Did you find that taking you a long time to make a decision, or were you somebody who was quite quick to make that snap decision? And
no, because running my own business back then, my ex-wife looked after the front of house side of the business, and I was the chef, and I looked after the back of house side of the business. And actually, I was too busy working in the business to work on the business. And I think that's perhaps the support and help you get from a franchisor. A franchise business, actually, they give you the tools and enable you to coach and guide you to stop getting in the mundane in the business and run the business from an overview. And most good franchisors will help you do that and not get stuck in the weeds, shall we say? Because if you're in the thick of it, you can't grow your business. And I think being a 27-year-old, 28-year-old young guy, I thought I knew it all. I thought I knew what I was doing, and actually, I didn't know what VAT was. I didn't know what PAYE was. I didn't have a clue. And it's all these things you're having to go speak to people and go, well, how do I do this? What is it? And I think that's probably why so many people stay in a 9 to 5 and don't do their own business, because it's the fear of the unknown. It's not, how do I set up a business? What is a sole trader? What is a limited company? And how do I set up a limited company? How much does it cost? And God, what limited liability insurance? What is that? Well,
just to give you my kind of experience, right? I'm not too far into my business journey, and it's just, how do you pay yourself? Okay, I can get the money into the business bank account, but how do I pay myself without the tax man, having a hissy fit?
Cost-effective way of doing it, as well.
Little things, isn't it? But then they stack up one on top of the other. It becomes very confusing and difficult to kind of forge a path through. Whereas what you're saying is, with that franchisor, you've got that kind of mentorship, that guidance that they'll take you through those steps and get you to the point where
they've done it. Every franchisor at some point was on his own in one shop or one gym, one restaurant, whatever it is, one business, being a sole trader or limited company on their own, and they've gone through the pitfalls. They know what they needed to do in business. They know what works well in their business, and they know what fails. And actually, there's a reason why 95% of franchise businesses work. It's because they're giving you the blueprint to success. They're telling you, here's my business. I've done all the mistakes. I know what you should be doing. Here's how you do it. This is what you need to do. And I don't think I don't know. I didn't know anything about franchising before I stumbled into the world of franchising 8 years ago. And now I think to myself, why do more people not get into franchising? What's stopping them doing everyday humdrum in a job perhaps they don't like, being their own business, being their own boss in their own business, in a franchise business? There are so many out there, from dog walking to owning multi-million-pound domiciliary care businesses. Like, no matter what your level of income is or your savings, there is a franchise out there that you can start with, and it might be small. And like I said, it might be dog walking, but it could be something bigger depending on your circumstances. But you tend to find, because the success rate is so high in franchising, you get into business, even on a small little unit, small little cafe or whatever it may be, dessert parlor. Get one, run it for 1 or 2 years. Most franchises that I've seen, generally speaking, we pay back investment in sort of 2 to 3 years. Any good franchise is around that 2-year mark. Pay back your investment. Okay, well, let's do another one. Let's do 2. And then all of a sudden you've got the income from 2. As soon as that pays back, then all of a sudden you can get to 3. You then tend to find that it snowballs, and that's where you see many multi-unit franchisees now growing in the UK. Like, multi-unit franchising in the UK has just exploded in the last 5 years.
It's changing that mindset, though, isn't it, for people? When you're an employee, you've got one role or one task, and that's it, right? That's your day-to-day. You are that person that is defined by this job or this role. Whereas I think, because it took me a little while to realize there's people out there that are just buying up multiple businesses, multiple franchises, and operating them at the same time. But what I've realized is they've changed their mindset. They're no longer, employing themselves or working, in a specific role. They're not a dog walker for life. They are a business owner, and they employ people to then run that business once they've got it to a level, and then move on and start the next project, get that up and running again, ops manager, director in place, and move on to the next one. And it's it's an interesting concept, and one that maybe I'm going to be taking up one day. I just got to get that initial capital myself. But I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? Minimal input and maximum output. I mean, sure, there's probably some headaches along the way, but it sounds quite appealing, and I'm sure it will do for many people.
Yeah, and it is. It's and you see it, and I must admit, I've seen people over the last 5 years in their journeys to sort of scraping to get their first franchise to now very comfortably opening their 3rd or 4th. And I think, good for you. Like, it's a lovely thing to see, really lovely thing to see.
Excellent. So Warren's Bakery then, were they franchised at that point in time, or was that the reason you were putting together all this documentation for them?
No, I was tasked to get them to franchise. So, and I think this is perhaps where franchising gets a bad name, is they were being quoted extortionate amounts of money to get them to franchise and to get them franchise ready. Silly money, where they thought, actually, we'll just hire somebody to do everything internally ourselves, because they were being charged stupid money. And I'm talking sort of like coming up to 6 figures to franchise their business, and it's not 6 figures. It's not a 6-figure job to franchise somebody. And that's how I got into it. So it was really just immerse myself in the franchise world and going to shows and seeing what people had to offer and talking to the different groups, the BFA, the then AFA, QFA, and just go and see what's going on and just make our brand known, talking to the banks, positioning our business in such a way that it was ready to franchise. And we did start to. Unfortunately, the company did hit the rocks a few years ago, and has struggled. And I think the franchising has now stopped with that business, unfortunately. But then that's predominantly down to manufacturing and the sort of trials and tribulations that manufacturers are facing right now with rising food costs, unfortunately.
Yeah, I remember them popping into my town centre, and it was great. I love the bakery, to be honest. So it's a shame to hear that, but there's no guarantees in business at all, is there, really? So that's a shame. But where did your career take you then from there?
So actually, I went to set up. I didn't want to leave franchising. So actually, I decided, and I was at a point I'd been with Warren's Bakery three odd years, nearly 4. And I had a few different companies saying to me, come and set me up. Come and set my company up for franchise, Andy. I'd sort of made a name for myself. I've always been someone who's very open and honest and black and white in business, probably too brutally honest with sometimes, but people sometimes appreciate an honest answer. So I got to a point where I went, do you know what? I am going to set up myself. And I set up a company called Be Smart Consulting. And I consulted for different companies, as well as brokered for them. And then did that for a year or so, and then decided to put my company together with 2 others, and we formed the Runo Group. So there was essentially 4 consultants that we were sort of trying to create a super company. And I spent the last few years doing that, recruiting businesses, selling for businesses. My expertise being in the food and beverage industry. That's what I know and love for 25 years. So when it comes to gyms and everything else, I'm not really a man. When it comes to food and beverage and food to go, I know the industry inside out, and that's where I've stayed, and I think that's where I'll always be. So yeah,
I've got a question for you then, because the industry is one that always seems to change, and it's led a lot by what goes on in London, I think. But what sort of trends are you seeing in the kind of food and beverage industry at the moment?
Well, unfortunately, there's some positives and negatives. It seems to be, as an industry at the moment, if we looked after the second lockdown that we had, so not this Christmas, but the Christmas before, there was a huge boom in people wanting to run their own food and beverage operation. Literally, inquiries probably quadrupled from second week of December. And I remember it clearly because that Christmas I had COVID and I really wasn't very well, and I had people emailing me and calling me, and I'm trying to do video calls and I'm looking like Quasimodo on Zoom calls with people, really struggling, but the demand was just crazy. And that kept on for probably the most part of last year, where people wanted, whether, I don't know why it was food and beverage, why it was hot. I think it was to do part in part with costs of property, rental costs plummeted by probably 30-40%. I saw lots of offers at that point being taken that were almost only half the asking price. You think, wow, like silly deals being given. But then we then saw the complete opposite coming up to this Christmas, because there was so much demand for food and beverage. We saw that rental prices were probably going for 10-20% more than asking price. And we've just done this massive wave from a glut of businesses closing, low rents, everybody taking the uptake, and now there's so much demand that prices have gone silly again. That combined with ever rising cost of living and food costs at the moment due to political factors and war around the world, it's making food businesses really have to, food businesses that I'm talking to and industry colleagues really having to take a tough look at their own businesses and supply chains at the moment to make sure it's robust enough to get through the uncertainty of the next 12 to 18 months. We're still, I think most businesses in the UK are still struggling from the manufacturing demand of last year, where we had all the shipping crisis, and suddenly stuff that was taking 6 weeks to come into the UK is now taking 6 months. And you're like, okay, so in food and beverage, for instance, I think last year it was 12 weeks to get an ice machine from someone, because there was no machinery, there was no parts coming into the UK. The price of wood rose by 200%. So if you're going to build a restaurant, all of a sudden wood's doubled, stainless steel's got up by 160%. You can't get equipment for 6 months. Suddenly, it made building sites costly. Generally, I saw the cost of building sites rise last year by about 30%.
Well, I think a lot of that was people building all their own home offices, right?
Yeah, well, I know builders as well that were having to. They were doing operations in London, but were driving down to Cornwall to pick up supplies themselves to drive it up to London, because you couldn't get a sheet of plasterboard last year for literally 6 weeks, and it got crazy. I think we've come over the hump now on manufacturing and distribution into the UK, or importing, sorry. So I think we're seeing that leveling off now, and it's getting back to some form of normality. Now the food crisis is here. I say food crisis, and I hate to say the word crisis, because it's what happens when the media go, oh, it's a crisis, and everyone starts panicking. It's not a crisis. This happens in food manufacturing every year, and has happened every year for the last 200 years, but we now call it a crisis. And it's about how you as a business are agile enough to plan ahead, do deals, like for Harry Ramsden's, for instance. We're on fixed pricing for the next 3 years. So we know that we future-proofed what's coming in and the cost of our business. And we spent a lot of time looking at the selling costs and the buying price to make sure that we still give the best value we can to our customer. And
I guess that's the difficulty, though, for somebody who's perhaps starting up a coffee shop or something like this on their own, right? They haven't got the financial clout or the brand. It's
not just that; it's economies of scale, and I think this is what people forget about. And people go, "What's economies of scale?" Well, if you, Ed, set up your own coffee shop, you would be buying beans from a supplier, let's say coffee beans. You might buy them at 20 or 18 pounds a bag. As a company that perhaps has 100 coffee shops, we'll be buying coffee beans at group price of probably 13 to 12 pounds a bag. Most good franchisors will pass that discount on to the franchisee.
Yeah. And
it's those economies of scale that you don't think about as your brand grows, and that's the power of brands in franchising, and it's massive. And the independent doesn't understand that; they just see what that they do and what they can buy. And actually, I think someone once said to me in franchising, "I'd rather own 95% of a lot than 100% of not a lot." I was like, "Yeah, actually, in simple terms, you're absolutely right." And that's why they franchised. And why they joined a brand. So yeah.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned Harry Ramsden's a couple of times then. So how did you get to there from Warren's?
Well, I was doing my own
From
business
Runo, sorry.
with Runo. I then got asked to go and meet David Ellison, Chief Operating Officer at Harry Ramsden's. And he lives literally 10 minutes away from me. So out of professional courtesy, I went and had a chat. I thought, I'll meet you for coffee. It's good to sort of increase my personal network. Wasn't really looking to move away from my own thing into let's say corporate life. But I come away from that meeting thinking, God, I really like what they're doing. I really like the plans that Harry Ramsden's has, and how Deep Blue Restaurants, who now own, they bought Harry Ramsden's just around lockdown, what they're trying to do and what they're trying to achieve with the brand. Because to me, the brand is, before I knew what Harry Ramsden's was the best fish and chips in the world famous. But I didn't really know it, and I didn't really know what they were up to.
Yeah.
When I come away from the meeting, like, oh wow, I'm really excited, and I had a little fire in my belly, and I thought, I really want to go and join these guys. I want to do something with these guys because I really like what they're up to. And the rest is history. I'm now 10 weeks into role, loving what I'm doing. I think the brand itself is on a huge trajectory, not only in the UK, but internationally. We've got massive plans. I think if I started domestically with what Harry Ramsden's are looking to do at the moment, it's quite exciting, and it's about making the brand, it's about be relevant again, especially to a younger generation. Harry Ramsden's, to the older generation, is everyone knows it.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of 45. I'm coming up to 45, and I know Harry Ramsden's, but it's people younger than me that perhaps don't know the brand.
Yeah, you old people. So you go on about. No, I think it took me a few years until after school before I realised what Harry Ramsden's was. But yeah, I can imagine younger people. It's not quite there at the moment, and yeah, I think every brand has to go through that. They have to evolve. They have to kind of refresh and bring things up to date to stay relevant, don't they? So, are you able to kind of give us a little bit of an idea on some of those plans?
Yeah, I can. Well, I'll talk about the UK, then I'll talk about what we're doing internationally as well. I think
Sure.
In the UK, we've now developed what we call our proudly serving model, very similar to how Costa rolled out their proud to serve model. But we for instance, we're in 58 Mecca bingo halls, and we're about to be in 100, I think, shortly, where we feature on their menu as Harry Ramsden's proudly serving. And we've gone in and we've trained their kitchens and their chefs how to produce a Harry Ramsden's fish and chips, because Harry Ramsden's, we're very particular about our product, how it looks, how it tastes, how it's prepared, very particular. We're now in talks with holiday parks and garden centres and attractions to do the same thing. We're also talking to a couple of pubcos as well. So I think that growth of the Harry Ramsden's proudly serving in the UK model is going to go through the roof. We also are in Iceland now, so you can buy Harry Ramsden fish and chips in Iceland, and it's one of their top selling lines in Iceland. And we've also just launched a food court concept in Sainsbury's in Selly Oak, which is going to be rolled out around the country. They've turned their old cafes and they've now made it into a destination venue. So the one in Selly Oak, if you're ever in the Birmingham area, go and have a look. It's phenomenal. You can do your shopping, but then you can go across and there's a Carluccio's and chickens, gourmet burger kitchen, and a Harry Ramsden's, and you can take the family, and if mum wants a pasta and dad wants a burger, and the kids want fish and chips, you can go and do all of that in the food court area. And that's very exciting. So that's
something fairly new. I mean, for the UK anyway. I've been to France a fair bit, and you see it a lot over there. You know, their supermarkets aren't just for foods. You know, they've got all these other brands within the same building, and I'm starting to see that in my hometown. They've got, Specsavers and things like this in there, but it's now kind of expanding out
This is
into
another
restaurants
level.
as well.
This is where I would take the children and the family, because actually it's always if you've got kids, everyone wants something different, and everybody, you can never decide where you want to go to eat, and actually you can go there. There's something for everybody. You can get feed the whole family in a night, and it's not like the old cafe. It's a nice environment there now. So I think that's going to be the next big thing through the supermarkets. I think once perhaps the other supermarket brands see the success of Selly Oak, Sainsbury's, I think there'll be a lot more supermarkets doing the same thing, because it's just phenomenal. Seriously great.
Cool. That sounds good.
So internationally, we have a site in all places in Kuala Lumpur with the Genting Casino Group, which does phenomenally well. I'm hoping to get out there in a few weeks' time to go and take a look for myself.
Yeah, hopefully you have some nice weather over there rather than the rain that we're getting today.
I'd like to think it'll be okay over there. But we're looking to do more with the Genting Group, and their Resorts World in Las Vegas. We have a Harry Ramsden's earmarked to go into there, hopefully at the end of the year. So for me, it's very much about trying to educate the world about Harry Ramsden's and how great it is and how great the product is. There is a massive, in this country and also abroad, there's a massive loving with the British culture and British cuisine. There are a few staples on the British sort of menu, and it is English breakfast, fish and chips, Sunday dinner, rock on ice cream at the beach. There are certain things that we do as a nation. I think even the other day on LinkedIn, I think I asked, I feel like fish and chips tonight. It's a Friday. Who else does Fish Fridays? And I think it was about 55% said yes, they do a Fish Friday. So it's still relevant. It's still very, very relevant as a brand, and it's something that's becoming more popular now. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's like you say, that international piece is quite interesting because it's a British tradition, isn't it? And
always a delicacy.
I guess especially in some of those southeastern European countries, there has been a trend over the years towards a Western kind of culture and style. So I remember going to Shanghai, and along the street it's just all Western, brands down there, which is completely contrast the rest of the country. But that's going to happen more and more, I guess. So you've probably got a really good market.
I think we've already had some interest from Southeast Asia. And we've had interest in Pakistan and Saudi and India, who are countries that are embracing sort of Western culture. And even the Americans, we have the American market. We've been talking to people out there now as well about doing something bigger and better, actually even Canada as well this week. So there is a demand for it. And it's about, what we don't want to do is just open up in random locations and not support people. As a franchisor, we're committed to responsible franchising. And we're not just going to take people's money and run. We want to make sure that we can support them with a sustainable supply chain with adequate training so that they can do the business when we're not there. And we're looking for probably sophisticated partners. And when I say sophisticated partners, I'm talking experienced food operators who can nurture the brand with teams in place already and operations teams. Because Harry Ramsden's, as I said, is a British institution. We're not just going to open up in random locations, and we take a lot of time and effort to get it right. I think no more so than our site in Bournemouth. If you get a chance to go down and have a look at it, please do. We've just spent just under £2 million on a refurb of the restaurant and takeaway, and it just looks stunning. It's huge roof terrace, outside terrace, restaurant, dessert parlour, seriously stunning.
How many people could it seat?
I think we're about just under 500.
Wow.
in peak times, it will do close to £250,000 a week in sales in peak times.
That's impressive for fish and chips, isn't it?
10 tons of fish in a week at peak time. So
wow.
So it's a lot. And considering what we make all our own chips still to the original recipe, so they're all handmade, rumbled on site and cut on site. It's a lot of chips and a lot of fish preparation.
Fantastic. So the Harry Ramsden story then, how did the brand come about? Is that something you've learned yet in your 10 weeks? I guess it's one of the first things they tell you.
Yeah, it's coming up for 100 years old very soon, in a few years' time. And it literally did start in a hut. I can't, unfortunately, I can't share with you the pictures right now, but it literally started in a hut, and it had a desire to, and Harry himself had a desire to do something better than what was being served. And the desire was to do premium fish and chips. Then when the first restaurant came, it was almost modelled on the Ritz. So people were coming in their best clothes and refinery, and coming to have fish and chips at Harry Ramsden's. And that's how originally he made his name, by almost becoming a fine dining experience of fish and chips. And obviously over the years that's evolved and changed. In sort of homage to that, we've now just developed what we call our Harry's Hut, and it is literally a small hut that we can put on holiday parks and tourist locations, outside hotels, beaches.
I think that's an awesome idea.
For Harry's Hut, yeah, it's not the wooden hut that Harry originally had. It's a little bit more modern than that, but no, we've done the same thing, just to sort of pay homage to sort of where we came from, essentially, because back in the day it was a little bit spit and sawdust back in the day.
So that's really interesting, because I've noticed that in the last 10 years or so, lots of dishes, very simplistic dishes that you wouldn't consider to be fancy or posh, are going through a revolution there, a gentrification kind of, almost, where they're now becoming macaroni and cheese, for example. I've seen that recently.
I had a massive resurgence with smoked bacon and paprika and Marmite flowing through, and all sorts of
exactly. But it's nice to see that back 100 years ago, something similar was happening with fish and chips, and actually a very, very small business that I'm aware of, they're now battering their chips, to try and change things. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a bit of a further revolution on fish and chips, and it's quite exciting and interesting to see.
The last 5 years, 10 years, or longer, the triple cooked chip came, and all these different variations of what is a chip. I think we're a little bit different. We like to keep up with trends, and we have certain menu items at Harry's that are sort of up with trend, but we don't mess around with our fish and chips. Our fish and chips are there's literally only 3 people that know the recipe to our batter. They obviously can't fly on a plane together, but it's that regimented, about particular oil at a particular temperature, battered in a certain way, with a batter that only has a 2-hour shelf life, has to be chilled at a certain temperature. It's that precise about making the perfect fish and chip.
It's more about that, taking that traditional, proven model, and like you say, you're going to get people that are really attracted to that, because it's the very British representation of it, isn't it?
It is, and I don't know about you, but if you've ever gone to a normal fish and chip shop, you may have had some fish and chips where the batter's coming off and it's soggy and wet, and the chips are either really crunchy and hard or really soft, and it's about quality. And you come into Harry Ramsden's and you have the same meal every time to the high standards, and that's why we've been sort of the pinnacle, world famous for fish and chips.
Fantastic. Right, Andy, we're coming up for the end of our time, I think. So I'm going to start asking my last 3 questions that I like to ask everybody to see if we can get some good stories from you. So the first one is, have you got any funny, weird, or strange stories that you're happy to share with us? From your
God,
career, not just random ones, but from your career.
from my career, I think the sort of highlight for me is I was general manager of a Beefeater Premier Inn, and I had a new deputy manager coming in on his first day, and I was training him, and I was opening up the post as I was talking to him, and I had a letter say, "Oh, come dine with me, is coming to Bristol." And I thought, I could do that. And I was being very blasé and very arrogant. I was like, "Oh, I should do this." And he was like, "Yeah, there you go, give him a call." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I thought I better go through with it because I said I could do it. So I phoned them up and I got an interview. I had a second interview. Then I had a screen test at my house, and then I got on Come Dine with Me. So,
Oh wow!
So I'm on one of the editions of the Bristol Come Dine with Me's. I think about 10 years ago now. So
Awesome.
that's probably the weirdest thing that I've ever done.
Well, that's funny you say that, because I've been going through rewatching them, as just sort of like half-hour filler, like in between, putting the kids to bed or something like that, and then dinner.
I ended up seeing some fat 90s bearded guy cooking best of British menu on Come Dine with Me at some point. I'm sure I hide away now, and if it comes on the TV, I'm turning that straight off.
Oh wow, that ties in nicely though. You're talking about the tradition with Harry Ramsden. So what dish did you go for? Tell me it's fish and chips.
No, I didn't. I wish that would have been so romantic. No, I did a baked field mushroom. I had a butler on hand, and we were serving us alcoholic iced tea from teacups. I even had a Union Jack outside the front door, which actually I have today for the Jubilee coming up. We've got the Union Jacks out the front of the house today. It would have fitted right in then. And then I just did a filleted beef with a balsamic shallot reduction, and then to finish, I did a strawberry and rhubarb crumble. So
very nice. Sounds
and
good.
I have to say I won. So there you go. So
you won as well. I was going to say, people, if they want to find out whether you won or not, should watch the episode. But
don't watch it.
I'm gonna hunt it down.
It's my biggest cringe moment, and I won't let my kids or my girlfriend watch it.
Oh, fantastic! I just want to hear the comments the narrator does. So yeah, but now my next question ties in. I don't know if you're going to give the same answer, but what's been your most proud or most inspiring moment?
God, there's a couple that sort of stand out. I think for me, and I touched on it earlier, of doing an Open University degree in business. Back when I was finishing my GCSEs, I was diagnosed with, it was brought to light that I was dyslexic, and probably the main reason why I didn't do very well at school. My results weren't amazing. Everything went in here, but I couldn't put it on paper. And now it wouldn't be a problem. With Senko and the help that kids get at school, I think it would have been a lot different. So actually completing my degree, where for 2 days a week on my days off, I was sat at a desk, headphones on, working, writing essays, researching, reading, while looking after a baby as well, working full time. And I think people probably wrote me off to say, "Oh, he's not going to do that." And I did it, which for me was my proudest moment. And it was weird because I didn't meet my classmates until graduation, because it was all virtual. That's when I met my classmates when we went to our graduation. So that was a bit surreal, but my proudest moment.
Oh, awesome. Well, yeah, should be proud of yourself for that, because you said you had a young child at the same time, and I know how difficult that is just on its own, let alone full-time work and studying afterwards. So yeah, good on you, Andy. Well done. So final question then, and this is let's imagine you're talking to somebody who's perhaps about to or thinking about investing in a franchise license, whatever the brand may be, whether it's restaurant or any others. What would be the main piece of advice that you'd give to them?
Research. Talk to everybody. Talk to as many people. So if you're looking at a brand, go and talk to franchisees. Go and say, "Hi, I'm thinking of joining the brand. Tell me about what's going on." Physically walk into shops and ask, is the franchisor here? Is the owner here? And go and speak to them. If the franchisor won't give you their details, you need to ask yourself, why is he not introducing you to these franchisees? Because if he's a good franchisor, he'd have nothing to hide. Ask questions, because you're going to invest a decent sum of money into a business with them, and you need to make sure they're right for you. And I always describe the process a bit like dating, but without the sex. You're looking at them, they're looking at you. Is it a good match? Is it a partnership that you can you sit down with the franchisor and have a beer or have a meal with at the end of the day? But if you can't, you shouldn't be getting into business with them. That's simple. So a funny story for you, Ed, just and I won't mention the person's name, but there's a multi-unit franchisee now, and he's currently got double figures Domino's pizzas, 50 plus Costa Coffee in chains, massive. He was working in a Domino's restaurant part-time while at university, and he was using the money to save up to buy a sports car. He was going to save up 20 grand to buy a sports car. And he heard, this is before Domino's was the size it is now, obviously. He heard one of the owners saying he's thinking of selling. So he said to the owner, well, how much do you want for your half of the business? And he went, go away, little boy, like, you can't afford it. And he went, well, how much do you want? And the current franchise owner then said, £100,000 for my share, my 50% share. So he took his £20,000 that he was going to spend on a sports car at university, went to the bank, did a business plan, got £100,000, bought half of the business, and there he is today as one of the largest franchisees in the country. So,
wow,
dream big.
What a risk, though. That's a big chunk of money to risk, and give up on a different dream, right? He's hit his goal and go for another one. But
what a great franchise story. Like,
definitely.
I know other guys who have put their first franchise, and don't do this, everyone at home, kids. I know someone who put their first franchise, their first Costa franchise, on credit cards. Remortgaged the house and put it on credit cards.
Wow.
Most franchisors wouldn't allow you to do that now.
No.
But again, now he's 20 stores deep. Very, very well. Again, not mentioning names, because I don't want
but they've got to have a real belief in those brands to be able to do that. And as you say,
that's research. That's getting out and
research.
Go and see competitors as well, and go and talk to competitors, and you have to be certain, and you have to be very careful. As someone who sells franchises myself, there are a lot of people who sell franchises or brokers who are just selling you for the commission they're going to make, and you have to have a real trust with someone and talk to franchisees, franchisors, and brokers until you get a good feeling for somebody. And I always say this to anyone who comes to me, even for Harry Ramsden's, and they're not right. I was speaking to a chap this week, and I said, look, Harry's isn't for you because you don't have enough capital. I think it'd be he did have enough capital, but I thought it'd be a strain on him because I don't think he had enough working capital. And I think right now cash is king, and you need to make sure you've got enough cash reserve just in case something happens, like the monkeypox. We don't know what this is going to bring now, and all sorts of nonsense. So cash is king. So whatever you invest in, make sure you've got some cash reserve on the side as well. Yeah. And I did say to this chap, I was like, anytime you want to phone me up and ask me about any other business, it doesn't matter if it's Harry Ramsden's or another business. If I don't know somebody in that franchise, I know somebody that's running one probably. So give me a call, and I'll give you an outside view of that business, because something that people will find out soon in franchising is that everybody knows everybody, and everybody hears the good and the bad. And so talk to people in the industry as well. So I urge them to contact you, Ed, and ask them about do you know about a certain business, or me, or anybody else, and get an honest opinion from people. Invest so you can invest wisely.
Fantastic. Andy, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and to hear your story, and excited to see what is going to happen with the Harry Ramsden's brand as it starts its kind of rebrand slightly. And
very quick, Ed. So I'll meet you for fish and chips soon. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Well up for that. All right, Andy. Take care. Thanks so much.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.